8 years have fled since, in the wilderness, I drew the rein to rest my comrade there, my supple, clean-limbed pony of the plains. He was a runner of pure Indian blood, yet in his eye still gleamed the desert's fire, and form and action both bespoke the barb. A wondrous creature is the Indian's horse, degenerate now, but from the centaur strong. The apparitions, which dissolve with fear, Montezuma's plumed children of the sun, and throne rough Cortez in his realm of gold. A gentle vale, with rippling aspens clad, yet open to the breeze, invited rest. So there I lay, and watched the sun's fierce beams reverberate in wreathed ethereal flame, or gazed upon the leaves which buzzed o'erhead like tiny wings in simulated flight. Within the vale a lakelet, lashed with flowers, lay like a liquid eye amongst the hills, revealing in its depths the fulgent light of snowy cloudland and cerulean skies, and rising, falling, fading, far around, the homeless and unfurrowed prairie spread in solitude and idleness eternal. And all was silent, save the rustling leaf, the gadding insect, or the greb's lone cry, or where Saskatchewan, with turbid moan, deep sunken in the plains, his torrent poured. Here loneliness possessed her realm supreme, her prairies all about her, undeflowered, pulsing beneath the summer's sun, and sweet with virgin air and waters undefiled. Inviolate still, bright solitudes with power to charm the spirit bruised, where ways are foul, into forgetfulness of chuckling wrong, and all the weary clangour of the world. Yet sorrow too had here its kindred place, as o'er my spirit swept the sense of change. Here sympathy could sigh o'er man's decay, for here but yesterday the warrior dwelt, whose faded nation had for ages held in fealty to nature these domains. Around me were the relics of his race, the grassy circlets where his village stood, well ruled by custom's immemorial law. Along these slopes his happy offspring rosed in days gone by, and dusky mothers plied their summer trades or loitered in the shade. Here the magician howled his demons up, and here the lodge of council had its seat, once resonant with oratory wild. All vanished, perished in the swelling sea and stayless tide of an encroaching power, whose civil fiat, man-devouring still, will leave at last no wildling on earth to wonder at or love. With them had fled the bison breed which overflowed the plains, and, undiminished, fed uncounted tribes. Its vestiges were here, its swallows, paths, and skulls, and shining ribs and vertebrae, grey bones of monarchs from the herds, perchance descended by De Vaca first beheld, or Coronada in mad quest for gold. Here hosts had had their home, here had they roamed, endless and infinite, vast herds which seemed exhaustless as the sea. All vanished now, of that wild tumult not a hoof remained, to scour the countless paths where myriads trod. Long had I lain twixt dreams and waking thus, musing on change and mutability and endless evanescence, when a burst of sudden roaring filled the vale with sound. Perplexed and startled, to my feet I sprang, and in amazement from my covert gazed, for presently into the valley came a mighty bison, which, with steady tread and gleaming eyes, descended to the shore. Spellbound I stood. Was this a living form, or but an image of the fancy drawn? But no, he breathed, and from a wound blood flowed, and trickled with the frothing from his lips. Uneasily he gazed, yet he saw me not, happily concealed. Then, with a roar so loud that all the echoes rent their valley horns, he stood and listened. But no voice replied. Deeply he drank then, lashed his quivering flanks, and roared again, and hearkened. But no sound, no tongue congenial answered his call. He was the last survivor of his clan. Huge was his frame, the famed Berdache, so grown to that enormous bulk whose presence filled the very vale with awe. His shining horns gleamed black amidst the fell of floating hair. His neck and shoulders, of the lion's build, were framed to toss the world. Now stood he there and stared, with head uplifted at the skies, slow yielding to his deep and mortal wound. He seemed to pour his mighty spirit out, and thus he gazed, till my own spirit burned, and teemed fancy, charmed and overwrought by all the wildering glamour of the scene, gave to that glorious attitude a voice, and rap endowed the noble beast with song.